I just realized that I had not pressed record before saying the blessing. So I'm going to say the blessing again real quick for anybody who's watching the video. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu le'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who makes us holy through mitzvot and who commanded us to busy ourselves with words of Torah. Now, we're not taking a break right now. I'm going to unshare the screen. Actually not unshare it, but change what I'm sharing. But I have to find the right thing to share. Boom. There we go. There's the thing to share. Let me move my screens around here real quick so that I've got what I'm sharing with you. It does not look like I am sharing what I think I am sharing. Okay, yes, I am
I
sharing.
can see a Safari page.
That is where I want to be. All right, so let me close these background tabs. So we've just got Safari open. So I have shown you guys Safari before. If, if I haven't said it before, then I will say it now. And if I have said it before, I will say it many times again. The internet exists for Safaria. Safaria is the culmination, the raison d'etre of the internet, as far as I'm concerned. This is a most amazing library of Jewish texts that are all interconnected so that you can follow a concept or a thought through them. Today, we're actually going to be looking at the Mishnah. And inside the Mishnah, we're going to be looking specifically at Berachot. Now, you might have noticed that the prayer, I said it. I was using the language from Talmud Berachot, right? So what's the connection between Mishnah Berakhot and Talmud Berakhot? So in the Talmud, for every concept, it starts with a piece of the Mishnah, and then it continues with what's called the Gemara, which is later generations having conversation about what was in the Mishnah. And the way that the Mishnah and the Talmud are written, they are written as these interrelated conversations, often as if rabbis who lived in different generations were sitting in the same room at the same time. So such and such a rabbi said this, such and such a rabbi said that. But part of the reason for this is because it is a model of how we are to continue working with our tradition, with our texts, and with our oral tradition. And Mishnah is written in Hebrew. There are certain changes between biblical Hebrew and Mishnaic Hebrew because, 1,000 years in between. But the Talmud, the Gemara part of the Talmud, is written in Aramaic. So the Talmud is like more difficult. Just linguistically, it's more difficult because you have to know more languages to be able to really parse it in the original. But the Mishnah is a great entry point because obviously it's the first level, or the first layer of the conversation, and because it's in a language that you're already learning anyway. So as you dig into the Mishnah, you're supporting your language learning for understanding prayers, for understanding the Torah. And even though modern Hebrew is again different from Mishnaic Hebrew, it's the same language but across history. So you're building your competence in sort of all of the different, let's call them dialects of Hebrew when you're working, in Mishnaic Hebrew. So Berachot is the first of the books in the Mishnah, and it's the first of the books within the first of the Sederim. So a Seder is like an organization, right? A set, an order of something. So this is the order of seeds, which is theoretically about agriculture, as you see on this screen. And
I'd like to
Berachot,
point out.
yes?
I'd like to point out that Seder is the same Seder that we use in Passover.
That's right. Exactly. And it's also related to the word siddur, which is what we call a prayer book, because a siddur is an ordered set of prayers. So these concepts are related. So stepping into Mishnah Berakhot, we're going to go to chapter 1. We're just starting right at the beginning. Now, something I want to show you. You can read this all in English translation, but I always remind people, any translation at all, no matter who writes the translation is interpretation, because words in different languages have different meanings to them, different flavors. Concepts are understood differently or parsed differently in different languages. When you go from one language to another, it doesn't matter which two languages you're talking about. There's always a process that the interpreter, the translator, has to make to decide what the important aspect is. And of course, every single person is going to have different ideas about what is important within the possible translations. And so the end result is a personal interpretation of what the text is. But on top of that, I want to point this out. If we look here at this first word, me'ematai, if we double click that word so that we bring up the dictionary, we see that ematai means when. So the first word here is when. And if we look at the English translation, let us scooch down, scooch down, scooch down, scooch down, scooch down. Boom. That's when we actually start this text. So the English translation of the Mishnah Berakhot, and you will find this throughout the Mishnah and throughout the Talmud, in every translation that I have seen published, there is a lot of extra explanation that goes into the English that is on top of the straight interpretation of the Hebrew to the English or the Aramaic to the English. It's additional interpretation and commentary on top of that. So it is absolutely valuable to read these things in English translation. I do not want to take away from that. But when you're doing that, remember that you are reading both an interpretation and commentary on top of that interpretation. It is helpful that in the vast majority of English translations of both Mishnah and Talmud texts, the translations of actual words will be bolded. so that you can actually tell when they're giving sort of additional commentary on top of their interpretation versus when it's just the ordinary level of interpretation that happens when you translate from one language to another. But as you develop your skills, it's great to be able to dig in to the text piece by piece. Now let's go ahead, and having said all of that, let's take a moment to read this commentary at the beginning here. The beginning of Tractate Berakhot, the first tractate in the first of the 6 orders of the Mishnah, opens with a discussion of the recitation of Shema, as the recitation of Shema encompasses an acceptance of the yoke of heaven and of the mitzvot, and as such, forms the basis for all subsequent teachings. The Mishnah opens with the laws regarding the appropriate time to recite Shema. So that's a good background. I don't think I could do better in giving you a preface to what we're doing, but let us jump into this. So I want to make a comment real quick that this word ematai in modern Hebrew, I'm gonna, just for simplicity's sake, I'm gonna write this in block letters instead of script. In modern Hebrew, the word is matai, when, but in Mishnaic Hebrew, it is ematai. And this meh that's right here, you may recall this from the video and the discussions on what I like to call short words in Hebrew, these prefixes that are their own words. Meh means from. So me ematai means from when. So, whoops, click all drawings. All right, so me ematai, from when. Koreen. Koreen is, so this nun here, whoops, now I've got to annotate again. This nun here is the Mishnaic version of the yud mem at the end of a word to make a masculine plural. So instead of saying korim, they say koreen with a nun. It's sort of an Aramaicized, because Aramaic was the language that people were speaking every day. And so that you get some sort of Aramaic influence on the Hebrew in Mishnaic Hebrew. But the root of this word is right here. The root of this word, nope, not that one. That's wrong. Hold on. Let me go back to annotate so that I can get rid of that. Boop. Get rid of my writing and come back here and try this again. Go away. The root of this word is kuf resh aleph. So the first definition of this is to cry, to call, to invoke, to proclaim, or to read. So in other places where we hear this word, in the synagogue, there is somebody who reads the Torah at synagogue. And that person is a Baal, which is a master, Koreh. So a master of reading. So the person who reads the Torah is a master of reading. And here we're saying, from what time do we read. Only they're not reading because most people don't have, the Shema written down, and nobody has a siddur at this point in history. So they don't actually mean read. What they really mean is recite. All right, so from when do we recite? Can anybody tell me what this word et means? Hazel, I'm going to pick on you because I'm pretty sure you know.
At
So there's a
off the
hint.
top
We
of
just had a verb, and the verb is going to have
an adverb,
an object.
an object.
So this word right here, et, is in Hebrew it's
Oh, here we
considered a
go.
preposition. It in English we call it the direct object. What do they call it? Signifier. I think it's the
Here we go. I found my notes. Yeah, the definite direct object marker, and it's a preposition.
right. So it's a marker saying, here comes the direct object. So, what is it that we're asking about? When do we read it? The Shema. So who can tell me what Shema means? Obviously, in this context, it means a specific prayer, but what does the word Shema mean?
Listen.
Listen. That's right. Listen. So if we double click on the word Shema, it will tell us, that it's this prayer, but that's number 2. If we write in here, Shema, then we'll get the first definition, which is to hear. So from when do they recite, or do we recite the Shema, which is a prayer that means to hear? Be means in. Aravit. Aravit is the root. Arav. And that root is to cross over or to blend. But the Erev, which I don't know if my Nikud are right. My Nikud may be incorrect, but the sound is correct, I promise. So the Erev is the evening. And Aravit is the prayer service of the evening. So if I click on here, we'll get evening time. Aravit, evening time. So from when do we say the Shema in the evening? So let's clear all the drawings. Come back here. Misha'a, so that mi at the beginning means from. It's the prefix. Wow, I am having trouble with English today. So sha'a means an hour or a moment or a while. So from the hour. She is another one of those prefix short words. It's short for asher, which means that or which. So from the hour which. Ha, which is another short word. Does anybody remember what ha means?
The.
That's right. So the Kohanim.
Oh, we don't use ha in front of Shema in the previous.
Right. They don't say the Shema. They just say Shema. When do you say Shema? That is interesting, isn't it? So Misha'a, from the time or from the hour that the Kohanim. What are Kohanim?
The priests.
Priests. Yes, priests. Nichnasim. So nichnasim means enter. So there we go. Kanas, to collect, to gather, to cover, to shelter, to bring home. If we go down here a bit somewhere, we'll have the nifal, nichnas, nifal. So to be brought in, to enter. So from the hour that the priests enter, le'echol. So the le means to, and the echol means eat. Be literally means in. Truman. So, trumatan.
Sorry, can you slow down a bit?
Sure.
Sorry, I'm just I've got Kohanim, and then what was after Kohanim?
Be, which is the preposition in.
No, I've got HaKohanim, and then there's
sorry. Yeah, I just skipped.
Nichnasim.
Yeah. Enter. Le'echol, to eat.
Oh yeah, that's the infinitive.
That's right.
To eat.
And this word, trumatan, so it's not coming up with a definition. And I know that sometimes you can find a word by just pulling up part of it like this. Aha, I hit on it. So because the taf is actually a hay that turns into a taf in this form, luckily the Safari software was smart enough to be able to find it. It couldn't find the word that was at the core of this piece when I grabbed the whole word. So why am I doing this? I'm doing this right now because I want to model this for you, because this piece of like digging into what the words mean is its own skill. And when you find yourself wanting to look up a word, sometimes you'll get stuck with something like this, whereas like no definitions found. So how do you dig down? First, start by saying, well, I know that this is a prefix, and I know for sure that this is a suffix. So if I grab this, will it give me the answer? And in this case, it does. So here we have truma, the contribution or offering for sacred uses. So what's going on here? From the hour that the priests enter to eat their offerings. So when an offering was made, most of the offerings had a portion that was completely burnt up on the altar, a portion that would go back to the person who made the offering, because you're supposed to eat the offering in order to complete the process of doing this sacrifice. And a piece of that offering goes to the Kohanim, and that is sacred food. Only Kohanim and their families who are ritually pure are allowed to eat that sacred food. And then a portion of most of the offerings are also, certain offerings are set aside specifically for the poor, but a portion of all of the offerings that are turned into food is for the poor. So there's a specific hour at which the Kohanim are going in to eat their sacred food, which, if we didn't know that before, we know that now. Clearly, at the time that this was written, that was a completely obvious thing. Oh, we all know what time the priests are going in to eat their sacred food. It's a little bit less clear to us today. But let's keep going. Ad.
So if you're part of the Kohanim's family and you're on your period, that means you can't eat the food.
You can't eat that food, right? You have to have non-sacred food. So that, I mean, you would have access to other food. You just wouldn't be able to eat the holy barbecue food. You'd have to eat ordinary people food and not holy barbecue.
That's a good one.
So the word ad means until, up to, sometimes it means while. So ad sof, sof means end. So until the end. Ha is the again. Ashmura. Ashmura. So this, I'm going to pull out this word again. So the root of this word, shin mem resh. I'm going to write it here. Shin mem resh. This root means to watch or to guard. So Shomer Yisrael is the guardian of Israel, right? So the Ashmura is the watch. They translate it here as night watch, but it technically could be like just any watch, right? So the guards are on watch. So until the end of the watch, which watch? Let me delete my drawings again and come back to here. Ha, we know what ha means, right? What's this word? Rishona. Before I let go, does anybody hear something that they recognize? Rishona. I'll pull it down to here. This is the root. Rosh. Head. Right? Harishona is the first. Okay? So from the first watch, or sorry, not from the, but until the end of the first watch. And then it says, divrei. Divrei, you see here that the word is word. So when we have a plural, like devarim, right? That's the plural word. Whoops. The plural word for words. If I want to say the words of, then I take away that mem, but not the yud. And instead of being devarim, it becomes divrei. So divrei means the words of. The words of who? Can
so
anybody?
So that's the construct form?
That's right, construct form. So who wants to be brave besides Hazel? We'll make Hazel do it if nobody else is going to be brave, but I want to give somebody else a chance to be brave and read this. I'm not going to let go of my mouse so that it stays highlighted and doesn't show up on the It is okay to struggle with this. Anybody? Anybody want to give it a try? Jane, you want to give it a try? No. Paul, do you want to give it a try?
Elias.
Okay, let's break it down. What are the letters? The letters are Resh, Bet, Yud, R, B, Y. We know that. And underneath the Resh, there's a Patach. What does a Patach say? Ryan, what does the Patach under a Resh say? Come on, you can do it. All right. Okay, Francesca.
Okay, sorry, excuse me. No, I'm going to try. Just try,
awesome.
okay? So under the R, I can't remember the rate. Is the R, so it's Ra.
That's right.
Would that be right? And then
That's
under
correct.
the bet is an E.
That's right.
You say B, and then you got the U. Then the Y is just a Y.
Right. So if you put that together, what does that say?
Rabia? No,
Rabbi.
I don't know. Rabbi. Okay.
Yeah, you had it. You had it. So the next word, it has an aleph, and the aleph doesn't have any sound of its own. Now
So
you see there's a whole bunch of dots underneath it, and that can be confusing. But the thing to focus on is the sigol. So the 3 dots there is a sigol, and the 2 dots, one on top of the other, is a shva. When you put those together, the sound it makes is the eh. It's just telling you that it's its own syllable unto itself. Okay. Right? That's what it means when you've got that 2 dots together with any other vowel. So it just says eh. Now the lamed after that, what does the lamed say?
So it's a L with an E and li.
Yep. That's right.
So L and then yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so just like in English, when you put a Y after an E or after an I, we don't usually say yeah. It just sort of carries the E sound, right? So L-E. And then the ayin is like an aleph. Yeah, exactly. And then we have a zayin.
So it's and then a resh again.
Right. Yeah. So put that together.
Eliezer.
Eliezer.
Ezer. Okay. Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, so Rabbi Eliezer.
Oh,
so
okay.
These are the words of Rabbi Eliezer that you can say the Shema up until the end of the first watch, when during the time when the Kohanim would have been eating the holy food, right? So I want to point something else cool out here on Sefaria. When you see a rabbi's name like this and you get this dotted line underneath, you can click that and you'll find out who is this rabbi. So he was a 3rd generation Tana. So the Tanaim are the rabbis of the Mishnah, and he was the 3rd generation of those rabbis. His name is Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus. He was a rabbinic sage in the 1st and 2nd centuries of the Common Era, and one of the most frequently quoted rabbis in the Mishnah. Considered to be Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's greatest student, Rabbi Eliezer was nevertheless a controversial figure. Coming from a wealthy but uneducated family, He left them to study Torah in poverty and eventually directed an academy in Lod. Highly conservative in his approach to Torah, he was isolated and eventually excommunicated by his colleagues. And that is a whole other story, a very interesting story. If you've ever heard of the oven of Achnai, he is the guy who gets excommunicated after the argument over the oven of Achnai. And if you have not heard this, I have planted a seed for a very good story. All right. So
is this like a Shabbat oven?
No, it was the newfangled the new technology of the day, and they're trying to determine sort of under what circumstances this particular oven is kosher or can be made not kosher. And there's a disagreement about whether something will make that oven unkosher or whether it will stay kosher. And
classic.
He has one opinion and everybody else has another opinion. So it's not that it was made from unclean earthen vessels, but that it could be made unclean because of the earthen vessels. So, all right, let's keep going. So that was Rabbi Eliezer's take. Now, my chavruta partner, my study partner, likes to say, whenever you see the words of Rabbi Eliezer, you know that was the wrong answer. Because he tends to always be in the minority. Just this happens a lot. All right, so va means and the. This is a what's the word? Prefix. Here we go. Prefix. And sometimes it means but. So and the. How do I know it's the? Because that underneath sort of stands in for the hey. We don't usually say veha, we just say va. Chachamim. Chachamim means the wise ones. Chacham means wise. So, and the sages is how that usually gets translated. So, and the wise one and the sages, omrim, say. So this, that's the Klein dictionary. Let me, what is this? Come on, go down, go down, go down. Are you, no, that's Klein. Klein. I want Jastro. Let's see if we can get Jastro. Klein, Open Scriptures, Jastro. All right. So in Jastro's definition, Jastro tends to do a lot of etymology and bringing you back to the simplest form of something. And in Jastro's definition, he starts out with to join, to knot, to be knotted, to or thick, to heap up. And then it becomes to join words and to compose. So I love this because when you think about the word omrim, that they say, so when you think about speaking, it starts from the place of connecting with another person. So, hachachamim omrim, the sages say, ad, until, chatzot. Chatzot is literally, it means half, but it's midnight, because we're talking about nighttime, right? So until midnight. Now we're going to get into a story about this guy. So we already did one name. Who wants to try on another name? Francesca was super brave and did great. Who else wants to try? Come on, Emily? Are you guys even here? All right, Hazel, you want to give it a try? Oh, sorry, not chatzot, but the one that comes right
next
after
one
the
after.
yeah.
Rabban.
Rabban.
Gamliel.
That's right. Rabban is Resh Bet Nun Sofit. Gamliel Gimel Mem Lamed Yud Aleph Lamed. Now let's see who Rabban Gamliel is. So there are two possible Rabban Gamliels that we could be talking about. We could be talking about Rabban Gamliel of Yavne, who was a Tannaitic sage in the 1st and 2nd centuries CE. He was the first to serve as Nasi, which is in modern times the word that we use for president in Hebrew, but it was the leader of the Sanhedrin after the destruction of the Second Temple, and worked to strengthen the Jewish community and leadership in the post-temple era. Rabban Gamliel occasionally acted in ways that involved publicly shaming other rabbis, which led to pushback and his temporary deposition. Now, this guy, he's kind of a jerk, to be totally honest, but he does have a very beautiful character arc, because after he gets deposed, he does teshuvah, and he's a much better person for it in the end. And the fact that we have this story, this character arc, where we get to see him being a total jerk over and over and over again, and then, you know, get this really humiliating thing happen, and the process that he goes through and how he comes out in the end, is a good reminder to us that even the highest leaders can be held accountable and can change and go on to be better leaders because of that experience. So the other one is Rabban Gamliel Hazaken. He was from the 1st generation of the Tanaim. He became a Nasi. He became president of the Sanhedrin soon after Hillel died, shortly before the temple's destruction. Part of his tenure came during a short respite from the Jews' troubles with the reign of Agrippa, who was befriended and taught by Rabban Gamliel. Many leniencies were legislated under him, and it was likely he who brought the great Academy of Jerusalem to Yavne. And then finally, we've got the third Rabban Gamliel, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi's older son, Rabban Gamliel ben Rabbi, took over the post of Nasi after his illustrious father. Though he died a few years later, he set a trend weakening the office when he appointed 2 others to the new and or reinstated positions of head of the court and sage. All right, so at this moment, we don't know which of these rabbis it is, but it's one of those Rabbanim Gamliel. And he, Omer is the singular form of this word that we had up here. He says, ad, until, she, that, ya'ale, will rise. So ole, when you go up to the Torah, you have an aliyah, and you are an ole. You are one who goes up. These words are all connected. Also, if you immigrate to Israel, you are an ole because you have come up to Israel. So, she ya'ale, until when will rise. Amud literally means a column or a stand. It also means a page. But in this case, I think the way to think of it is as a column. The shachar. So what does this mean? The column of the dawn. Amud hashachar is the first light of dawn. So the first column of light of dawn is Amud hashachar. So Rabban Gamliel says you can say the Shema at night, anytime when it's dark, all the way until the first lights of the new dawn. Ma'aseh. So oseh means to do. But a ma'aseh, in the context of the Mishnah, is like a story. There was a thing that happened. This is kind of the once upon a time of the Mishnah. So ma'aseh, a story, a thing happened. She, that, ba'u, came, plural. Banav, so ben, son, one. Banim, a bunch of sons. Banav, his sons. So remember before when we were talking about suffixes, that O suffix means his, but when it's got a vowel sound right before it, instead of having a diphthong where you have two vowel sounds together, the vav loses its vowel sound and just becomes v. So instead of being banayo, it's just banav. All right, boop, clear. So a story that they came, his sons, me, from, who besides Hazel, because I know you know this, Hazel. Actually, let me call on somebody. Blake, do you remember what the word bait or bite means?
Nope.
Okay, I'm gonna give you guys some hints. Beit Knesset is a synagogue, and a Beit Sefer is a school. A Beit Midrash is a place where you study Talmud, where you study Midrash.
It's also related to like the Beth and Beth Shalom.
That's right, because Beth Shalom is actually Bet Shalom. It gets anglicized as Beth Shalom. So
is
also
it
when
house?
It is, it's house. Very good. Yeah, you nullified my need to give another hint. It is house. So it is actually house of. So in this particular case, house of what? They came from the house of. This is the part. When you have I can't, the word for it just went out of my head. Like a compound word. I'll just call it a compound word. So Beit Sefer It's smichut, right? So it's what you might think of in English as a compound word. There's two words together. When I want to say the school, I don't say ha beit sefer. I say beit ha sefer. So the gets attached to the second word in the compound. So they came from house of the mishte. The root is shata, drink, as in the verb drink, but this mishte is, the noun drink. So they came from the bar. Now, this particular line is the whole reason that we have been going through this word by word by word, because I want to show you what the English translation says. Let's skip down. There was an incident where Rabban Gamaliel's sons returned very late from a wedding hall. That is not what this says. Now, it is true that there is additional discussion outside of, not only outside of the Mishnah, but also it's not in the Talmud. The Talmud doesn't say, oh yes, that was a wedding that they went to. Like, this is additional legend, agadah, that's been added onto it. Because why were the rabbi's kids at the bar? It must have been a wedding hall. And maybe
that sounds like putting a modern cultural lens on it.
Yeah, maybe it was, but they had like, calling it a bar, I think, gives us a picture of what it, they went to a place that sells alcohol. That's what this means. They went to a place that sells alcohol. So it could have been a pub. It could have been, something like a bar. It could have been a party venue. It could have been a wedding hall. Could have been any of those things. But do not doubt that in Judea of that period, there were pubs or bars where they sold alcohol. Like, I can show you pictures of what my then 10-year-old kid declared was the hot dog stand of the Hippodrome in Caesarea. There's like a very obvious concessions stand built directly into the stone of the Hippodrome from Roman Caesarea here in Israel. So if you can imagine a concession stand, which probably was not selling hot dogs, but some other kind of street food, then you can also imagine bars or pubs or something like that, a Beit Hamishte. So Rabban Gamliel's sons, they've been out all night. Ve'amru lo, so this is that amar again, but this time it's amru. It's they said. So they said lo, to him. Lo, so this lo, notice this lo and this lo, they sound the same, but they mean something different. This lo is to him. This lo means no or not. So lo karinu, this is the word that we started out with, right? Kara, to recite or to read. And there's the nu at the end, which means us. That's us. So, lo karinu, we did not recite. Here comes the direct object. Shema, we did not recite Shema. Amar said, lahem, to them. Im, if, lo, if not. Allah rose. Amud hashachar, the first light of dawn. Chayavin, chayav, chayav means to be legally bound or to owe in this particular case. So it doesn't mean that they're guilty. It means that they are responsible, that they are that they must. So you're obligated. Atem, you guys. Likot, to recite. Ve, and. Lo, no. Zo, zo is this or that. Bilvad. So
Zo
B
is the
is
masculine form, right?
Zo is the feminine form.
Oh, the feminine.
Like zot. Okay. And ze is the masculine form. So if you look, let me come back to here. Boop, boop. If you look over here, zu at ze ze. So this, that. Here we've got zo, this feminine pronoun. All right. So bilvad, so the B is in, and levad is alone, but together it means alone, only, or solely. So, and not only that, ele, which is like except but, or but not. It's I don't think we have a word in English that is an equivalent version of but that's just in one word. In Spanish, there's a word sino that is like, no hice eso, I didn't do this. Sino hice el otro, but I did this other thing. So in Hebrew, we have this ela that plays that same role. But in English, we would just use but again. So not only that, but kol, all, ma, literally what, but that in this case, she'amru, that said, that they said, chachamim, the sages, the wise ones, ad, until chatzot, midnight. I'm speeding up here a little bit because we're repeating words that we've already done. Mitzvatan. So I'm going to grab this. And we've got, nope, that's the wrong one. It's not unleavened bread. It's not metziot. It's not matzah. There we go. Mitzvah, commandment. So the hey turns into a taf, and we get this nun here at the end because it's theirs. Mitzvatan, their commandment. Ad, until. Sheya'aleh, just like before, that will rise. Amud hashachal, the first light of the dawn. So he's saying, you have to read, and not only that, but even those sages who say that you have to say the the Shema up until midnight, they actually their commandment is actually that you have to say Shema up until the dawn. So he's telling his kids, I know you think you got out of having to say Shema because you were out until past midnight, but I'm not the only one who says this. The other sages actually agree with me, even though you've heard different. Hektel, letting rise in smoke, burning on the altar. Halavim, so chalav here. So chalav, we usually think of it as milk, but it's in this context, it's actually the fat of the cattle, which we're not allowed to eat, but which gets burnt up on the altar. So the burning of the fats, and evarim. Oops. Evarim. Come on. There we go. Press thick. Come on. Are you going to give me a good, easy translation, or are we going to have to? There we go. The pinions, the limb, the member, the organs, and the organs. Mitzvatan, again, we've got mitzvah, their commandment. Ad, until. She ya'aleh, that will rise. Amud hashachal, the first lights of dawn. So what are they saying here? So let's back up. And not only that, but all the sages who said until midnight, they command that until the sunrise, until the beginning of the sunrise, the burning of the fats and the organs, they command those until the rising of the sun, the beginning of the sunrise. What does this have to do with anything? Any guesses what this has to do with anything? Vikol, and all. Ha. Somebody shout out. What's that mean? What's ha?
The.
Good. Ne'echalim. So let me show you what the root here is. Echal. Echal. I don't know if you remember earlier, we had the infinitive version of this, le'echol, to eat. So ne'echalim. Let's see if that's no. How about this? Yeah, all of the things that were consumed. Le yom, le is 2, and yom is day. Echad, 1. So all the things that are consumed in one day. Mitzvatan, their commandment, is until Sheya'ale Amud Hashachar, until the first light of the dawn rises. So everything in the sacrifices that are happening overnight, or that happened from yesterday, all of those count until the rising of the sun. So even though you like the sacrifice was made yesterday and it's been burning overnight or whatever, it's still considered yesterday's offering until the light of the dawn. Im ken, if so ken means yes. So if yes, we can interpret that as if so. Lama, why? Amru, there's that amar again. Amru, they said. Chachamim, so why did the sages say? Ad chatzot, until midnight. Kedei, in order leharchik. Let's grab this. Rachak means far away. Rachak means to be distance. Harchik is to cause something to be distant, to remove, right? So to distance ha'adam, the person, min, from, ha'avera. So the last thing I want to touch on before we start talking about this for the last 15 minutes, notice avar right here. That root is the same root as the root for like past, to pass over, and to transgress. So ha'avera is like a crossing over of a boundary. So in order to make sure that a person is made distant from a sin, a thing where they crossed the boundary into sin, they said, you should say the Shema before midnight. But really, they agree with me. If you haven't said it by midnight, but you still have time before dawn, you should still say the nighttime Shema. All right, folks. I'm going to stop share for a moment, but we can go back to the share at any time. I would like to hear from you guys what you think about this. But if you guys aren't going to talk because I'm sitting here and because you guys are going to be shy with me, then I'm going to shove you off into a breakout room so you can talk without me, because I want you guys to actually talk.
Okay, I'll talk. I'm talking.
All right. So what do you think about this? What stands out to you? What pieces come up for you?
Oh, well, for me, I'm finding learning the Hebrew quite difficult. I'm enjoying it, but it's taking me a long time. I'm actually learning by rote the symbols. Like each night I go through a little test. And anyway, but I'm getting there slowly. But the meaning behind it, the meanings, I find it interesting that all the rabbis can be quite different in their opinions and thoughts. But still, I think that we're all still trying to get to the same place, which is to be at one with God and to be good with God. I'm thinking.
Yeah, to be good with God. I think
Yes.
that is definitely what they're trying to do. They're all trying to figure out what the right way to be good with God is. And we've got basically 3 different opinions happening Yes, Roseanne, yes. What they're saying is that the Shema is not equivalent exactly to the temple sacrifices, but is somehow related to the temple sacrifices. Yes. And that is exactly the connection that they're making, or that at least Rabban Gamaliel is making and claiming that the other sages were also making. So I want to just say really quickly, we will talk more about this later when we're talking about the Amidah. But after the loss of the temple, then prayer becomes a substitute for the sacrifices. But even during the time of the temple, the times for prayer were related to the times of the sacrifice. So that sort of cultural development was not that huge a leap. It was a leap, but it wasn't that huge a leap.
But now that we don't have the temple anymore, isn't this, whether you say Shema before midnight or after midnight, that sounds a little bit trivial?
Well, some would say that it's actually less trivial now because we don't have the temple sacrifice, right? So if the temple sacrifice had rules at which things were supposed to be done at certain times, and we can't fulfill those mitzvot anymore, so in that case, now it's even more important that we should have some way to connect with God through these mitzvot, and having some discipline, some boundaries about when we do these things is part of how we have a practice that allows us to connect to God.
So although there's no temple anymore, we still relate a lot of stuff to the temple.
Yes.
We still have that in mind.
We still have that in mind. Yeah. And in fact, so this is not so much in the Reform movement, and in the progressive movement, it kind of depends on your community, but also it's less so in the progressive movement than in Orthodox or conservative or neolog. But in the Orthodox setting, not only do people say the Shema and the Amidah at set times, but they also read the Torah commandments to do sacrifices at the time of those sacrifices. So they're sort of mentally exercising the sacrifices that they are that we are unable to do. We can't do the real thing, so we're doing it in our imagination by reciting these texts, the commandment in the Torah, and then the discussions in the Talmud about what was actually done.
Okay,
Ryan.
thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I just wanted to say, it seems like the lack of sacrifices left a very large hole in the Jewish community, and it seems like it's taken, generations and thousands of years to kind of really get collectively on a page in order to fill that hole through a combination of just kind of like gathering bits and pieces of the culture from around the world, from Jewish communities into what we have now. So.
Yeah, so it's an interesting balance, I guess, because I don't know how early it was when people finally felt like, oh yes, we are sufficiently replacing sacrifices with prayer. But even today, within certain Jewish communities, especially within Haredi communities, the sort of people that are like, we want Moshiach now, but not only within those communities. The act of reading and reciting what would happen in those sacrifices is still very important, because there is this hope, this intention that at some future dates, that those things will happen again, and that is an important part of our culture and an important part of fulfilling the totality of what we're doing. I think that, to me, what's kind of interesting, I don't know how much of this was just the Haskalah, the Enlightenment, and the rise of reform movements and things like that, and how much of it was already existing before then. But this idea that we don't actually need any of that. We don't need the temple. We don't need the animal sacrifices. We don't need the first fruits sacrifices or the grain sacrifices. Like the entire temple cult part of it, we just don't need anymore. In some ways, that feels like a very modern idea. But I do wonder, even before the Age of Enlightenment, how many Jews felt that. We're like, no, actually, I'm kind of good with the way things are right now, because it would be a super pain if 3 times a year I had to fly to Israel or take a boat to Israel, with the money equivalent of what I am supposed to sacrifice, since I clearly can't afford to actually bring the fruit from my farm or whatever, right? Like, yeah, that is right, Jacob. The Reform Judaism does not expect the establishment of the third temple. And Progressive Judaism as well. It is my understanding that this is not part of like some future hope. Me personally, I have very ambivalent feelings about it. Among them, if this were ever to happen, it would create all sorts of power struggles that I think would be hugely toxic to our community. And so my reason for being strongly against the idea of a third temple has more to do with the ways that I think that it would be damaging to our community. And also within the Tanakh, God makes it very clear through the words of prophets that God is far more interested in our acting justly and behaving properly towards each other than with the act of sacrifice. So I am perfectly happy saying the Amidah in lieu of, bringing goats to a particular temple.
Yes, you could bring goats to a temple and slaughter them, but doesn't mean that you're going to be loving to one another, does it? And it might not, and you might not even, you might be just, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I'm reading a book right now by an Orthodox rabbi, a highly respected Orthodox rabbi, who is deeply critical of the way that Orthodox halakha is being sort of handled these days, in that the people are so concerned about minutia and not concerned with the values behind the minutia. The things that the progressive Jewish movements actually get right is to really focus on the values, sort of like values first. The mitzvot are really about cultural values of taking care of each other, of,
The kavanah.
not the kavanah, the not being jerks, the, um, having a society that works well, where even though there is such a thing as rich and poor, but there is a floor beneath which nobody can fall, because the community will make sure that the poor have what they need. And also, no matter how rich you are, you're still subject to the laws of the people, and it's, you you have the same law for the rich and for the poor. This is something that is actually said and repeated within Torah, and it is significant when you compare it with the Code of Hammurabi, which literally had different laws for different castes within their system. So if you were the wealthy, sort of the nobles, you had a different set of laws than if you were the peasant level. And
Still a bit like that
within,
in practice.
yeah, exactly. But the Torah ideal is that there should be one law for all.
And just wanted to point
Um,
out that Blake and Jane have both um, wanted to say something in the chat.
Thanks for bringing that up. Blake, do you wanna say something, Blake?
Yeah, it's interesting that the conversation, and I'm kind of glad to hear it, move towards it. The point on actually needing the sacrifice, and it almost feels, it almost feels like God, in essence, said, "I don't need that. Look at what you have been able to achieve over the past few hundred years, by going out, learning." Or having slightly different ways, even slightly different ways of saying some of the prayers, to eventually come back and become whole. All of that was done without this ritualistic sacrifice. From my perspective, it seems a very, very human thing to need that physical ritual to perform for us to feel justified that we've given something. Whereas, and I think I'll allude to the part where God asks for us, a tent is enough in the middle of a desert, as opposed to the grandiose ideas of what um, was proposed at the time for his first place of meeting. It seems if we can learn less is more. And I was speaking in one of the group chats about how with a lot of the holidays there's a lot of practices, building the hut outside. I can't remember what holiday that was.
Sukkot.
Sukkot. Um, but if you don't have that intention within you, is it you're just running through the actions? And from my perspective, someone who doesn't do a single action but can find that intention even just once a day to sit in that humility and have that prayer or that talk or that reflection in the energy of God, um, seems to seems to be not just good enough, but the whole point as well. And it seems like
Yeah.
not having that temple, not having that place is a real physical way of just taking all of that away and say, now sit with me. And going back to you're talking about what we're just talking about now, the difference of whether they can be at the ritual and still say the prayer. It seems the answer was you can just say the prayer. You don't have to be part of your own giving to feel that you are giving in that regard. So yeah, and that point with the temple, it would feel like taking a step back if the point of the temple was just to spring up old actions like rituals and less of a place of a pinpoint in saying now there is that place for God once again, and this is where you can come if whatever reason to be with God, as opposed to this is where you can come to do all those other stuff that got you into trouble the first time around.
Yeah. So there is a thing that I have been sort of studying and trying to, I don't know, pull apart for a number of years now. One of my special interests is herbal medicine. And it has long bothered me that across the Tanakh, every place that wormwood is mentioned, it's mentioned as though it's a punishment. If you do these bad things, you'll have to drink the bitter wormwood. You've done this thing, and now you will have wormwood. And the funny thing about this to me, the weird sort of disturbing thing about this is that wormwood is a medicine. Yes, it is bitter. It's not exactly yummy. You can make it better by putting some honey in it. But the various variety of wormwood are important medicines for a number of different ailments. And this was known back then. Like, this was not an unknown thing. It's not, this bitterness isn't really a punishment. It's actually a way to fix the ailment. I think that it's a metaphor for you're going to have some bitter medicine. You're not going to like this bitter medicine. And this thing that you're saying about, yes, we lost the temple, but actually now, without the temple, you're being forced to sort of face God without that sort of intermediary space of the temple and the priests and everything else. I think that this is exactly that kind of bitter medicine. It was so hard for the people who actually lost the temple, and who actually had in living memory this idea of being able to go to the temple, and that this stuff was happening at the temple. But for what it has done to the Jewish people, for the Jewish people, in some ways, it has been very important medicine for us, to force us to be responsible for our own religious practice and not just leave it to the Kohanim. Jane, you asked, could that be the frame and the house of our place on earth? I don't remember the context. Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I think for me the Shema, when I say it in the morning and at night before I go to bed, is it makes me feel grounded, and it makes me feel like I've got a connection to the world above, that I'm almost in a protective kind of zone. And I think, yeah, when you say the temple, we don't have the temple anymore, but this is our kind of house, the prayer of the house. The prayers make up our house and our structure and our framework. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
its meaning. Yeah.
I like that. I like that.
And I also wanted to add with the minutiae of the how people get so devoted and obsessed. I just think it promotes OCD behavior, really, where you're just following a formula and a rote and you're not really, it's distracting to your health. So, rather than having the thoughts behind what you're actually doing and giving meaning to what you're doing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we're at the end of our time, and I need to get a little bit of sleep before the next session. I don't know who among you is going to be able to come to the next session, but obviously, just like this one, that one will also be recorded, and I will post them to both classes so that everybody can see the sessions that they weren't able to come to. Thank you so much for coming and taking part. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Bye, Elio.
Bye.
Bye.